Hey everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a lesser-known corner of Qing Dynasty history, exploring a topic that's often overlooked in mainstream discussions. We're going to talk about the lives of young men known as xianggong, who worked in establishments that catered to a male clientele. It's a complex and often misunderstood part of the past, so let's unpack it together. To understand their situation, we first need a little context. During the Qing Dynasty, particularly in bustling cities like Beijing, social norms were very different from today. While society was strictly patriarchal, certain forms of male-to-male companionship and entertainment were present, especially within the elite and literary circles. It was in this environment that institutions employing xianggong emerged. These weren't just random street performers. Many were young boys, often with backgrounds in traditional opera, known for their refined skills in singing, poetry, and conversation. So why would a young boy end up in this life? The reasons were almost always rooted in hardship. Many came from impoverished families who, facing starvation or overwhelming debt, saw selling their child as a last, desperate resort. Others might have been orphaned or displaced by famine or conflict, left with no other means of survival. They were sold into these houses at a very young age, sometimes as young as 8 or 9, and their childhoods were effectively cut short. They became the property of the house owner, bound by a contract that was nearly impossible to escape. Their training was rigorous and all-encompassing. From the moment they entered the house, they were taught the arts of entertainment. This meant learning to sing traditional ballads, play musical instruments like the pipa or guzheng, recite classical poetry, and master the delicate art of conversation. They had to be witty, charming, and educated enough to entertain a clientele of wealthy merchants, scholars, and officials. Appearance was paramount. They were dressed in fine silks, wore makeup, and were taught to move with a certain grace and elegance, often blurring traditional gender lines in their performance style. This entire process was about crafting them into desirable entertainers, objects of aesthetic appreciation for their patrons. Life inside these houses was a gilded cage. On the surface, they were surrounded by luxury, fine clothes, good food, and elegant surroundings. They spent their days and nights entertaining patrons at lavish banquets, where they would sing, pour wine, and engage in clever conversation. A popular xianggong could become a minor celebrity in certain circles, sought after by powerful men who would shower them with gifts and money. This created an illusion of glamour, but the reality was far grimmer. They had absolutely no personal freedom. Their every move was controlled by the house owner. They couldn't leave without permission, choose their own friends, or refuse a client. All the money they earned, including expensive gifts from patrons, went directly to the owner. They were given a small allowance for personal expenses, but they were perpetually in debt to the house for their food, lodging, and training costs, a debt that was intentionally inflated to ensure they could never buy their freedom. The social stigma was immense. Despite being entertainers to the elite, they occupied the lowest rungs of the social ladder, on par with other marginalized groups. They were seen as unfilial for being unable to carry on their family line and were ostracized by mainstream society. Even if they managed to leave the profession, the stigma would follow them for life, making it nearly impossible to marry, find respectable work, or reintegrate into society. They were trapped, not just by their contracts, but by the rigid social structure of the time. And what happened when their youth and beauty faded? This was the greatest fear for every xianggong. Their entire value was tied to their youthful appeal. As they aged, patrons would lose interest and move on to younger entertainers. Their income would plummet, and they would be relegated to menial tasks within the house. Some might become teachers for the new generation of boys, passing on the skills they had learned. Others, less fortunate, would be unceremoniously thrown out onto the street with no money, no skills for any other trade, and no family to turn to. Their future was incredibly bleak, with many facing poverty, illness, and a lonely end. It was a system built on exploiting vulnerability. These were children and young men, robbed of their agency, their futures dictated by the desires of others. While their world might have been filled with poetry, music, and art, it was a world devoid of choice, freedom, and genuine opportunity. Their stories are a poignant reminder of the harsh realities that existed beneath the surface of a seemingly sophisticated and cultured society. It highlights how economic desperation and rigid social hierarchies can create systems that trap individuals in lives they did not choose. Studying these histories is important. It gives a voice to those who were silenced and helps us build a more complete and nuanced understanding of the past. It shows us that history isn't just about emperors and generals, but also about the everyday people who navigated incredibly difficult circumstances. Thank you so much for joining me on this historical journey today. It's a heavy topic, but an important one. If you found this interesting and want to learn more about the hidden corners of history, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments what other historical topics you'd like to explore. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.